All right, 10 tips to win football games. Today's tip, have a communication plan. Have a communication plan. If it is very important that you're able to communicate, but this isn't really about that, guys. Although we're going to talk about communication, it's really going to be more about having a communication plan in place. I don't like when people start I think most people think they are good communicators. Would you agree with that, Chad? Most people's self-awareness is, I'm a good communicator. Well, we can't all be good communicators. Just like everybody's mama told them they're special, we can't all be special. Okay, that's my line, Chad. Maybe that won't get quoted, but we can't all be special, and we can't all be. Half the teams have to lose. There's just some people are not good at communicating, but they think they are. So let me tell you how you can help be in the top half of the good communicators, the ones that say they're good at communicating and actually are good at communicating. And that would be to have an actual plan, a plan in place on how you would go about communicating. So we're gonna basically talk about just this today, guys. So this will go on whatever discussion we want to have with each other. But I think you communicate in 4 ways as a coach. And I've made this pretty clear before. You guys have heard it, but some people hadn't, and maybe not this conference. People communicate electronically. They communicate formally, informally, and impromptu. And I want to talk about all 4 of them and some ways that you can use those methods of communication deliberately, intentionally, not just saying I'm a good communicator, but deliberately and intentionally being a good communicator. All right, the first thing, covered electronically. Look, if you're a coach and you're not emailing people or using Google Drive or whatever it is, you're wrong. If I'm the head coach, I'm sending out communications all the time. Let me give you 2 examples real quick, then I'm going to bounce it off of y'all on this, and we'll go by each one like that. I'll give you 2 examples. You're the head coach. You want the assistant coaches, somebody's got to set up the video camera, right? The end zone camera, or whatever it is. You send those coaches out at the beginning of the year, staff responsibilities. Then maybe on Friday morning or Thursday, now because of email, you could schedule an email to go out to the coaching staff every Friday morning in the fall that says, don't forget, this is what everybody's got to do tonight. Right? It's not hard. That's easy to do. Copy and paste and do 10 straight emails or whatever. And it says on there, Michael's got to set up the end zone camera. That's his pregame responsibility. When I look out there and don't see the end zone camera, I start saying, what's the deal? Michael says, ain't nobody tell me. And I say, we send you the email every Friday. It's right here. I sent you at the beginning of the season right here. All of a sudden, does that mean you're right and he's wrong? No, well, let's just get the camera set up at this moment. But you, 1, don't have that many of those moments when you communicate. But 2, you can immediately diffuse that issue, which could have been a big deal if they just didn't understand who's supposed to set up the camera. Second thing, dealing with a principal. I can name 100 of these, by the way. We don't have time, but I'm going to give 2. Dealing with the principal. Chad's the principal at my school. Believe it or not, Chad is the principal. You wouldn't know by listening to this podcast, but he is a principal. And Chad's the principal. I'm the head football coach. I'm sending Chad in July all of our staff responsibilities. I want him to know everything we're doing. You know what Chad's probably going to do? Not read any of that stuff. Okay, he's got a lot bigger stuff to do. He's busy. He ain't got time for that. But one day in like September, something happens. The kid's not getting to play. Their parent's mad. The parent calls the principal, and they're mad at the coach. But it's not about playing time, Chad, because they're not one of those parents that complain about playing. It's because y'all don't watch the locker room down there. Their kids sat in there, and nobody watched the locker room last Wednesday and got something stolen. But they're not complaining because the kid's not playing. It's only about the locker room, Chad. This is a very normal occurrence. And so Chad, because he knows that we have a plan, he's seen it, he gets an email, he can say, well, I'm sure coach got a plan, but I'll check into it. And he calls me and he says, hey, somebody's saying y'all not supervising the locker room after practice. And I can say, well, Sam was in there that day. remember it's on Wednesday, and you remember by our form there I sent you on Wednesday, Sam's in charge of the locker room. It's way more likely at that moment, principal's going to say, okay, we got a plan. Let's say how it works the other way. The principal's never heard from you. The principal knows nothing about you. The principal knows nothing about you having a plan, being organized. You never send an email to the principal with all your plans. The principal gets called by that parent. Principal doesn't know if they need to defend you or not. They say they'll look into it, and they call and say, Coach, y'all got to put some people in that locker room now. I got people complaining all the time. And it's the same thing happened, but because you didn't cover it electronically, you stopped yourself from getting through that really easy. I think probably what people said the most about me coaching was the principals, and people like that, was that we made stuff that was kind of hard look easier. And I feel like these were the things that were able to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Chad, who was my principal in this story. And you don't have to talk about that particular Chad and talk about anything, but let's talk about covering things electronically in any capacity as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As a coach, I want to actually talk to you about being the principal and covering things electronically and the way I do certain things, and the way Chris talked about a moment ago, guys, how email is your friend in so many ways. So at the beginning of the school year, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we covered well, to say that I consistently remind teachers of their duty responsibilities and what they're supposed to do and things we need to check for safety. So I wrote one email, and I copied and pasted that email, and I duplicated it and sent it the first day of the month on Monday, whatever that day was. It was May 4th was a Monday. That was the first Monday of the month. That's when it went. And so every month they got the same email sent to them, so that, God forbid, we had a physical altercation and someone got hurt, and people are like, well, y'all didn't have a plan for having people out there to be supervising. Every month I sent the same exact email that reminded them what they were supposed to be doing, for that very reason. And as a coach, you have got to do those things to cover yourself electronically. If you set a coach down and have a talk to them about their performance, and you think this might lead to you getting rid of them, you dang sure better cover that electronically with them, which is, you need to make sure you professionally send them email. Hey, Michael, this is what we talked about. I need you to do better with this. You need to make sure you're in the locker room on this day and make sure you're covering your thing. And I appreciate your help. Let me know if you got any questions. You better cover it that way. Because remember, if you're the one in charge, they're going to blame you.
We throw some nuggets out all the time, for coaches, but this may be one of a few rare episodes where it's going to transcend coaching. We'll keep it in that world, but basically whatever one's job is that is listening right now, be it principal or even superintendent or dog catcher, they're going to find themselves having to do these four things. Okay. So Michael, what comes to mind when we talk about this, and from a coaching standpoint, maybe what comes to mind with just covering things electronically?
I think it's the two main things are, one, it shows you're organized. It shows you have a plan. You're putting it out there. You're sharing it with parents, with kids, with administration, with adults, with teachers, whoever. It shows them that you know what you're doing. You're a professional, but like I say, it protects yourself. You are covering your basis of when, if something, God forbid, does happen, that you did have a plan. This was what we were trying to do. No plan's perfect. There's still going to be issues. Things are going to go wrong. So you can still change your plans, but you've put them out there. People know you have a plan. You're doing the best you can to try to enact on.
So I was the athletic director for a long time, and I had 20-something sports, right? Nobody gets complained to more than athletic director. So because you're not the principal, you get so many of the middle type of complaints, not the principal gets the big stuff. So anyway, I got a ton of, and I had middle school and high school. I was at the district level and different stuff. So I've gotten a lot of complaints over years. You know what the number one complaint people say about coaches, and whether they're right or wrong, I'm not even saying it's accurate, but what's the number one thing that they say when they don't like the coach? They suck
They
at
just don't
communicating.
communicate good, coach.
They just don't communicate. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying that they're accurate. Most time it's about playing time. Let's
It's
not
just an
bullshit
easy
about it.
thing to fall
But
back
it
on.
is what they say. And usually they're right in that aspect. So they say nobody sent us a remind on this or that, or no. There's something that's accurate that they're right about. And they say you can't communicate. So that's why they're mad their kid's not going to play.
Right.
So find ways to cover it electronically. Okay. Find ways to cover yourself by covering it electronically. I feel like this is that same parent that was mad earlier is going to go to you don't communicate. And let me tell you something about communicating electronically, and we'll change subject. Don't think it doesn't work. Let's say practice gets canceled. Okay. Practice gets canceled. You put that thing out on a remind, the Facebook page, the website, whatever you got to put it on, right? But if you don't think communication works, let me explain this story to you. Chad, if we ever said no practice today, and we put it on Facebook and we put it on, had an announcement at school, put it on Facebook and whatever, no practice today. How many kids came to practice that day?
That would be 0, sir.
0, not one kid. What'd that tell you about the communication? Every one of them received it. It was a 100% success rate. If we ever said, hey, you got to turn your forms in by next Tuesday, you know how one of them kids would be like, well, I don't know. Nobody told me that. Like, well, it's pretty damn interesting that we use the same exact communication tools that we use to tell you we didn't have practice, and you got that message. If you'll cover yourself electronically, you got a lot of ammunition like that. There's a lot of good arguments back, and so hopefully that'll help some people out. The key, remember today, guys, is have a plan. So that's a plan. Scheduling, like Chad said, he scheduled his duty schedule, which would be a coaching equivalent of your Friday night schedule or whatever. He had it scheduled for
reminding the guys monthly about their locker room responsibilities.
Put it in
that
there.
covers you as the head coach, that you're telling these guys what to do.
Yeah. Every month, send them an email. Hey, guys, just want to remind you, let's make sure we're doing a good job in there after practice, supervising kids,
Right.
whatever. Somebody ever says you don't do it, you're like, check my email. I remind them all the time. Next thing, formal communication. Okay, these are going to go probably in what I would consider descending order of probably the most formal or the most significant, but also the least impactful or the top ones. And the more impactful are the ones we'll get to at the end. So formal communication is simple. It's like we're having a meeting, okay? Now, in the coaching world, when do you have a meeting? Well, usually after the season, or right, you may have a staff meetings. You may meet with the principal. You may meet with other coaches, like the basketball coach or something. So I'm talking about that, but I'm mostly going to talk about player meetings. Formal meeting means you set the time. You said, hey, we're sitting down at 10 o'clock on Wednesday to talk about whatever. I met with every kid a couple times a year. Sometimes 10 minutes a kid, Chad, it take 2 or 3 weeks to meet with 10 minutes a kid.
Brother, I'm doing summatives with teachers. I've got them scheduled.
Yeah, same thing.
And I schedule 20 minutes a teacher, and that is 4 solid days of meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That's from 8 a.m. to 2:40.
And you got how many on the staff?
Oh,
I know. You got about 60-something people total.
Total, yeah, like
Yeah.
that. I'm thinking about having a certificate, 50-something.
My point was that's a football team. I was trying to equate it for people that don't know your school. You've got basically the equivalent of a football team, 60 or 70 people that work at your school, which is most people probably got about that many people on the varsity team or something, so maybe they got less, maybe they got more, but that's probably the average. So yeah, it's not easy to do formal communication. It's not easy to say, I'm going to sit down with every kid. Well, then sit down and actually schedule it. And you'll be like, damn, that's a lot of work.
Mm.
I take every Tuesday and Wednesday.
Wear you out too.
Yeah. I do these podcasts for different coaches in Georgia. And then we record this one and I do it on Tuesday and Wednesday, but it's a long day. Like, it's something I have to literally be disciplined and diligent with to have this formal time, but this is what we're going to do. So, but
this is a high level of formal communication.
This is real high level. This getting this one. Mike, but the formal communication needs to have a plan. It needs to be concise. It needs to be clear expectations. It needs to be presented and delivered well. Because remember, you set this meeting, like you asked them to be there. So if you're going to meet with every teacher like Chad's doing, and in my case, we're talking about coaching. So you're going to meet with every player, every coach. You're going to meet with the basketball coach, you're going to meet with the principal, whatever. Have a damn plan. Go in there and say how it's going to be. So, I've used this before, but I'll say it again. Like formal communication to me would be something like, I'll give you an analogy and then I'll let y'all go at it. We got a ninth grader. Ninth grader is going to be 10th grade, right? So it's like April. It's like, this time of year, April, May. You got a ninth grader who's going to be a 10th grader who was a dominant ninth grade football player. He's arguably the best player on the ninth grade team. He's a running back. We got a varsity running back that's better than him. He's going to be a backup. He's going to be just good enough to play on the varsity, but maybe play in the JV game, should dominate the JV game, be pissed off he doesn't play more in the varsity. That's you can just see this coming. This is what's going to happen. So I'm going to have my meeting with him. We're going to talk about how things are going in the weight room and what his goals are for the year and how his girlfriend's doing or whatever it is. I'm just going to do my normal thing with him. And I'm going to say, hey, man, I just want you to know that 10th grade year kind of hard. And he kind of look at you, it's April. He ain't paying no attention. He's like, yeah, sure, coach, it's hard. I'm like, no, man, 10th grade year is hard on kids like you because you're a dang good player. You're going to be one of the best players in this region. But here's the thing. You're going to get out there in 10th grade, and it's going to be the first time you're not playing with kids your own age. You played with ninth graders last year, before that 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 5, whatever. And now you're going to play with 18-year-olds. And there's going to be times when you're going to want to quit. You're going to be frustrated by this. And that kid will look at you like, coach, you don't even know what you're talking about. You can even say, hey, man, if you're the best one, you're going to start. We're not taking nothing away from you. I'm just telling you, you're going to be one of the best players in this region if you can get through this year. And he'll be like, yeah, whatever. He don't pay no attention to that, by the way. He's not listening to that. He said it's April. We get out there to about October. And this kid's gotten slung down on the scout team for about the 9th time. And he's got that look on his face like he's about seen enough of this. You pull that kid over, hey, man, come here. Let me talk to you for a minute. He comes over there and you just kind of smile at him like, hey, remember when I told you the 10th grade year was going to suck? The kid will start laughing. He'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, what else did I tell you? He won't remember. He won't remember nothing about it. Be like, man, I told you were going to be the best player in the region. You remember that? Yeah, see? Like, I'm a damn genius. I knew it was going to be a tough year for you. I'm telling you, you're going to be the best player in the region. So don't get discouraged. Just keep working. Yes, sir, coach. He goes on about his business. Now, let's talk about if that conversation never happened. You just assume because the kid's a good ninth grader, he knows he's going to be a damn good player one day. And you just assume that he knows 10th grade is going to be kind of tough because there's a kid ahead of him. You don't ever talk to him about it. You get out there, he getting slung down 9 or 10 times. You're not really aware of what's going on. Kid goes home, tells his mom, coach hates him. Nobody likes him. He hates football now. He don't even like it anymore. He'd rather be doing this or that. Next thing you know, the kid's not at practice one day. He's done messed around and quit on him. When you finally get him in the office, you're like, dude, you're going to be one of the best players in the region one day. What's wrong with you? He ain't hearing it now. He's done. These are true stories, by the way, that I'm telling you, in case you're wondering. These are true stories of times that things went well and didn't based on communication. So formal communication with a deliberate plan can be very helpful. Chad, what you got?
I mean, that it's the same thing. Like I know I relate it back to the admin stuff, but it's the same aspects we work on there. Like when you talk to new teachers, even older teachers, sometimes you do the same things. You got even like, so if I know that when Michael and I used to work together and we were doing something with someone's schedule that we knew was probably going to be a tough road the next year, we started talking about that in like April, like Chris was saying, like this ain't going to be easy. Like there's going to be some times you're going to want to quit on this, but we worked our way through it. So just the same thing, we come back to them again later and we remind them about that and pump them up about how good a job they are doing. And we felt like it was going to be this way, but there's going to be a lot at the end of the tunnel on it. It's coming. And you've got to do that. if you don't have a plan on that aspect of it, you will lose so much ground with your people because they don't, that's where that being in touch with the people feel comes in. Like when they say you
But you
don't communicate, that's really what they mean. They
Well,
don't
and you
think
use
know
that,
what's going on.
you use that formal, we're talking about just a formal piece of it right now. So you use that, that's called meeting that for you in your case, you're talking about teachers and summative conferences, they have to have it, they have to have them anyway. So you use that opportunity. Well, if you're a coach, you use the opportunity to talk to assistant coaches. Maybe there's a guy who thinks he ought to be the offensive coordinator. I just bring it up in the formal meeting. Let's talk about it.
Right.
Maybe there's two quarterbacks. Both of them are pretty good. They can't both play. You go on and let's hash it out in this formal talk. Let's talk about how this is going to go. Like use that formal communication as a tool to get some stuff accomplished. What you got, Michael?
I think the kind of like tag for this is this is the meeting where you got to be able to predict the future. Like you got to try to get out in front of things before they become an issue. So like you were talking about with this kid, you know he's gonna have a tough sophomore year. He don't know. So you're using this to get out in front of him. Or whatever it is. Like a lot of these formal communications are, either the best ones are the ones you're trying to get out in front of. Sometimes you're having to be reactive to something. But either way, they're not always a lot of fun meetings, but they're necessary in order to be successful.
And
You have
exhausting.
to, yeah, it is. I mean, but that's part of the job of being the leader. You're being the guy in charge. You have to be the one that assistant coach don't have to have these formal. You don't meet with all the players and coaches and all these things. This is one of the glories of being the guy in charge, is that you have to be the guy that's out in front of all these things, talking to these people about uncomfortable things.
Yeah, I think you can use this four things we're talking about tonight, covered electronically, formal communication, and then we're going to get to informal and impromptu in a minute. I think you can use those things in whatever it is you do. So if you're the 9th grade D-line coach, I think you can do these things. It obviously is going to become more pertinent and as you get up the chain. But if you are able to, if you heard what I said about that kid, I guess it's important to note, we're going to move on. That story I told. Don't miss the part where I said I asked him about how wrestling went or his girlfriend or his weight room numbers, because it can't all be about you telling them how bad it's going to be or whatever. There's got to be a mix of all that now. I hope people heard that. All right, the next thing is informal communication, and I'll be brief on this one, but I give the story on this one before. You've heard it, you'll hear it again. Informal communication means it's formal for you, but not for them. Okay? So you said, I'm going to go see the kid today in second period. He doesn't know I'm coming. That's informal. Or you could say, I'm going to bump into, in my air quotes here, all the kids. I'm going to go at the basketball game. I'm going to go to the baseball game. I'm going to make a concerted effort to go check off things. So what I would do, I had a very fortunate time as a football coach. I did have scheduled because the athletic director where I could be a lot of different places. So I would sometimes get a clipboard and a roster and just sit in the lunchroom for a couple of days. And I made sure I talked to every kid. And I literally crossed them off the roster. Or I might have sent them all a text, for example, nowadays, because that's what I literally printed off a roster, sent text messages to kids. Those are informal communication. You understand what I mean? Like it's formal to you, but it's informal to them. They think coach is just checking on, and you were. But the reason I had that clipboard was I don't want to miss anybody. So maybe it's in the winter. I'm bumping into kids in the lunchroom, asking them about how basketball's going or wrestling, or I'm bumping into them at the basketball game, telling them, hey, I heard your lifts are going well. I heard you doing a good job in the weight room. Looking forward to getting going with you. All that kind of stuff. So you guys got anything to add on that? Chad?
No, I stole this straight from you. I try to do this with the staff in the building. I really try to do this with not even necessarily the teachers, because I tend to have a lot of contact with them, but I try to make sure with even the custodial staff and people like that we get by, and I make sure I've seen them and spoken to them at least once a week. And some of those folks I talk to daily, like multiple times. But some of them I don't, some of the night crew who's just coming in and stuff. So I try to do that same sort of thing because it does, they do feel like they have a connection to you when you do that. So they can't, so you rarely get any of that. Well, I don't even know who this guy is. He never speaks to me. I never do that. Any of that kind of the BS that comes up like that, because that can cause problems for you. And it just, but as you always talk about, you must have a plan for doing this.
Mm-hmm. That's what the thing is. To remember, let's keep in mind the title, 10 tips to win football games. I know we're not talking about kickoff team tonight. Now, if you listen to all 10 of these, there is a decent amount of ball talk. Like we talked a decent amount about efficiency on offense, defense, third downs, catching punts. We've talked about a lot of that kind of stuff. But I truly believe that these are tips that this today will help you win football games. It's not some kind of culture mumbo jumbo kind of talk. It is.
Don't try to ride my coattails on that culture.
Don't worry about that. This is some ways where I'm saying if you can just get a clipboard and go see every kid, you might be surprised. You know, if you can just sit down with kids and try to pump them up and also see the future with them, you might be surprised. Michael, you got anything to add to that before we get to the last one?
No, I'll say the only thing I'll say is informal communication is all about building relationships. Like you're making a point to go find this kid to talk to him about something that's probably not even about sports. So this is the time that, you know, you ask them how it's going, or, you know, how's baseball, how's basketball, whatever. You're just talking to them. You just don't want them to forget, you know, that you're still around. You can't go just talk to these kids during football season and be done with them in November and pick it up again in May. Like you got to make a point to go out and build these relationships with kids. And that's what the informal communication is, the biggest strength of it.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. Good job. So the last one, I think, is probably the hardest to quantify, the hardest for me to tell you what to do, and it can be the most important or the most impactful. You know, if impromptu communication means, for those that don't know the word, neither of you planned it. So think of formal, both of you were there, you planned. Informal, you're planning it, but they're not. And impromptu, neither of you really planned it, or better yet, you didn't plan it. That may be a better way to say it. Right. So what is impromptu communication can happen two different ways. And that's why I had to quantify that. So say you're at the baseball game and the principal's at the baseball game, because the principal's got to cover the baseball game. And for whatever reason, you just sitting there talking to the principal, and he or she has nothing else to talk about or do because they're at the baseball game. You finally got them. And they ask you, you know, hey, what do y'all need in the weight room? We got a little bit more money. We can do a few things with the weight room. You know, it's baseball season. Maybe we got a little extra money in the instructional budget or something. And somehow that comes up. Are you prepared to talk about it right then? Because if you're not, you're going to miss out on a great opportunity. Impromptu communication is very important. You have to figure out when that principal mess around, say something like that around me. You know, I'm going to be like giving them a list of stuff. I'm ready. So I hope I'm explaining this the way I intend to. Impromptu communication is really about, are you always ready to strike when the iron's hot? Maybe, but if it's not hot, if the principal wasn't there that day, whatever, you know, always be ready. And then the second example I would use is something like that. You know, you're sitting in your office, you're the head coach, you're sitting in your office, you're minding your own business, you're watching film, whatever. An assistant coach comes in and he wants to talk to you about why he's not the defensive coordinator or something. Or maybe it's a kid wants to talk to you or his parent about why he's not playing quarterback. You weren't prepared for this, but are you ready to use this moment to sell your vision? You know what I mean? Are you ready to really use this moment to say, you know what? You want to talk about why you're not the offensive coordinator? Let me tell you, we got these 3 or 4 things we got to work on. You do this and this and this, maybe you will be the offensive coordinator one day. But we got to work on these things. You got to be ready to talk about it. If you just fumble through it, you're not going to capitalize on that chance to get that guy better. Same way with that quarterback or that parent or whatever it is. Chad, if I am not making sense on this, I would like for you to take the baton and run the second leg on this. Because in my head, I've talked about this so many times that I'm not sure that I articulated that as well as I sometimes feel like I do. But you have to be ready to sell your vision whenever the opportunity presents itself, be it principal at the baseball game, dude walks in your office, whatever.
I think one of the key things you said in there that I would like to highlight, and I don't know that I'll add much more to, is that impromptu communication. This is going to sound bad, and I don't mean it to, but you can very well get set up in these talks because of exactly what Chris said. It was not formal or informal on your part. They were formally ready to come to you about something you didn't know was coming. So when you find yourself in one of these that you worry could be contentious, and I don't mean to always take this bad road on it, but I always think about these things. Make sure you don't promise people in impromptu communication stuff that you don't really know an answer to. Like, don't do it.
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think about there. That's
Right.
another added piece to this. Yeah.
Because you can really get yourself painted into a corner on something when you just didn't expect it was coming at you. And it's okay being professional and polite to say to somebody, even a coach, something, well, you know, coach, I hadn't given this much thought, but I will, and I will be happy to sit down and think about this and then talk to you about it once I've kind of put my mind around it a little bit. But don't let someone catching you off guard put you in a bad spot.
Yeah,
Like that.
that's actually really important to this. I'm not sure that I don't need to, as I talk about this type of stuff all the time, need to add that in, because let me make this part of my definition clear of impromptu communication. You should always be ready to sell your vision. That's what it means. That's really all it means. But if just getting somebody to shut up or moving on to the next thing is not part of your vision, you totally drop the ball. Because Chad's right. Somebody kind of gets you and you're not ready to talk about it. You accidentally agree to something that's going to be way worse for you. Well, that's not at all what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's the opposite of what we need done. Are you always ready to sell your vision all the time? Michael?
Yeah, I think when I think of this impromptu communication, it usually is not somebody coming to tell you what a great job you're doing. Sometimes it might be, maybe that principal's going to tell you what a great job you do. Most of the time, these people are coming to inform you of something that you were doing poorly in their eyes.
They just want to help you do better is all
correct.
it is.
So I think it's important that you, don't let your emotions get the best of you when things like this happen. As Chad was, I feel like that's kind of where you were going.
That was 100% where I was going.
Like, you have to just, don't get upset and fire back at somebody. It is okay to say, let me get back to you. Let me, they're mad about something that happened. Let me find out some more information. Let me call you tomorrow. A lot of times when you're in those situations, the person just wants to be heard. So let them talk. Let them tell what's going on. Don't get defensive. Don't because somebody is necessarily coming at you. It doesn't mean that you're under attack. Don't take it that way. I don't know if it's necessarily always that way, but I feel like, when I think of the impromptu stuff, that's kind of what comes to my mind is that part of it. The people coming to tell you what a great job you do.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I do think, I really do think this was something, and I think this kind of comes natural to me more than, I don't want to sound like I'm better than anybody or anything, but I am pretty good at that. Meaning like I can be sitting around just watching TV, and if you want me to pull out, if somebody brings up something that we can do different in the concession stand, I'm ready to talk about what I like and don't like about the concession stand right now. If you want to have that talk, I'm ready. If you want to talk about defensive back play, I'm ready. Let's go. And I don't mean that to brag. I'm saying I thought that was something that really served me well, is what I mean. That we were able to get things, and Chad, Michael, we were able to get things because of things like I was ready to talk about it when the principal was ready to talk about it. We were ready to get things with the superintendent was ready to talk about it. I was ready to talk about it. when it was time to talk to the defense staff about something, I was usually ready to talk about it. I try to not to get caught off guard very often or emotional or what Chad was saying. So I felt like that served me well on eliminating some of the petty problems and the battles that you had to pick. If the basketball coach was ready to talk about basketball, I was ready to go. And if he wasn't, it just didn't come up because we were just sitting around talking about something else. That's okay too. I'm not saying you got to force these things, but be ready to sell that vision when the opportunity presents itself. That's really what that means. So I hope people got something out of them 4 things: covered electronically, conduct some formal communication, conduct some informal communication, find some ways to bump into your people, and then be ready when they bump into you and you're not ready. Get ready in a hurry. Like I always say, Flat, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. You don't have to get that. I don't know that I ever say that. It's something that guys in the weight room say or something. But
Just trying to get quoted. That's all that was.
Yeah, I've tried hard to get on that get quoted on the internet this week. So Michael, you said that don't get emotional when somebody comes at you. So I hope you took that advice. That's why you hadn't said much back to Chad after he was being all salty to you earlier.
Way more mature than.
Yeah. He's making sure he's ready for that impromptu communication.
Michael's had some opportunities to learn from past experiences.
We're not going to get into that. We didn't tell all the examples.